warning at the start of the podcast. This week's episode, we discuss some things that other listeners may find quite distressing. Hello everyone and welcome to this week's That's Mental Mate. I'm joined this week with Zoe Dilworth. So I found Zoe online. She was processing her art with incorporating her mental health, and her aim is to eliminate stigma, which is what this podcast is all about. So I thought we could have a very interesting chat.
Yeah, sounds good.
So we start the podcast every week asking each guest how they are.
Good question. I suppose I'm up and down really. I'm going through a bit of a hard spell right now, going through with finishing my degree and not really knowing what I want to do with my life. So that's scary but also exciting because there's new opportunities. So I'm just sort of like on that edge of not really knowing what to do.
Yeah, I think everyone your age might be in that.
Yeah.
I know I definitely was once upon a time.
Yeah.
So we maybe even want to just start from the start. So I know we had a wee discussion before we came in. So do you want to maybe start talking about when you noticed your mental health starting to go downhill, or when you started to notice a change?
So it was very much focused around my self-image. So as long as I can remember, I've had low self-esteem. But I started noticing a low mood when I was around 12, 13. That's when I was diagnosed with depression initially. And then that was very much surrounded with the way I look and also just in general as well, low mood. And then I developed very bad eating habits. I was sort of restricting my intake and then eventually leading to me being diagnosed with atypical bulimia at around 14, 15 I think. So I'd been in CAMHS since about 13, all the way up until 18, but I was also in the eating disorder service, which was not great, to be honest with you. That's sort of when it all started, and leading up to it, that was when I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder at 18 when I was leaving CAMHS. So that's sort of when that's sort of like my journey really, where it started and how it developed. And then I started sort of using my art. I was always very artistic, especially from a young age, so I really pursued it with GCSEs, first year of A-levels as well, until I dropped out to move into art. But I always used it as my therapy, you know. It was never a chore. It was always, if I'm in school, I go home and I do my art. Like I liked school, but also the bad side of school as well. So art really helped me through that, and I was able to express myself. I found it hard to communicate how I felt, especially in my teenage years when my mental health was declining. So yeah, that's where it kind of sort of started and where it's ended up now.
Yeah. And you said you didn't you said you liked school, but then there's the other side to it. Do you think that was maybe the start of your mental health declining? Was it because of school? Was it because of normal teenage angst and that kind of thing? Because it sounds like whenever you came out of school, that's when you finally got the results of what really was wrong with you, your borderline personality disorder. Do you think that was hidden down because just of your age?
Well, it's hard to sort of say. I suppose things did get worse towards the end of school. It started getting worse at the start, and then it got even more declined going through school, especially at around 16. That was when I started experiencing symptoms of psychosis. So hearing voices, feeling bugs under my skin, seeing things as well. So that's what sort of led me to not want to continue my A-levels, because I was so I was missing classes, I was missing school as well, days of school. So I think getting out of school was good for me, I think. because I also stayed in between leaving school and going to Belfast Met. I stayed in Beechcroft and inpatient, which was a big turning point for me as well, because I was in a safe place where I couldn't harm myself, and I was able to get out of that within a month. So I stayed for around a month, but then I left to go to Belfast Met, and that's when things improved, but also I noticed things got worse in different ways, if you know what I mean. So yeah.
And do you mind talking about where did you say you were? Sorry, the house.
Beechcroft.
Beechcroft. So did you go there voluntarily?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And do you want to maybe describe it for someone that might not know what it is? I know I don't know. I'm not local, but
yeah. So it's basically an inpatient unit for adolescents. So it's just a mental health facility. They also have the eating disorder unit in there as well, but I was just there for general, to keep myself safe, basically. So it's like a hospital, but not as clinical, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And did you find that helped?
Yeah, it was scary because I obviously couldn't be at home. I couldn't even leave to go out for the day until you stayed for a certain amount of time. You had an assessment period. So it was scary because only my family could visit me, and my friends could only visit me but at certain times, so I didn't have freedom really. But it was a big turning point for me, I think, because that's when they got my medication right. So, and it kept me safe, it did. As much as it was scary, it did keep me safe, which was the main priority,
So I've had a few people on the podcast that have been they've one has went in off their own accord, one was actually sectioned, and they've talked about how scary it was, and they felt like they didn't really belong there. Do you feel the opposite? Do you feel like it might have been a bit different because it was an adolescent one? Because I know one of the girls I was speaking to, she won't mind me saying this because she said it on the podcast, she said that she went in straight from work, and she was still in her suit, and the patients wouldn't believe that she was a patient. They thought she was an undercover doctor or something because she went in her attire. But then I suppose like I said, it could be completely different because it's adolescent.
Yeah, it was sort of I didn't really make any friends or anything. It was very quiet, it was scary at some points, when people had episodes, I suppose you could call it, and even myself, when I had really dark times in it, it was a scary place to be, but the staff were there to help. As much as being a teenager and you don't really want the help, they really did make a difference. And at the time I didn't think it was helping, but when I moved away from it, I was that's where I needed to be at that point, Yeah.
And do you feel maybe myself, I know I hated school, and I hated the routine of it and doing subjects I didn't really care about and all this kind of stuff. Do you feel when you got out of that environment, and then whenever you, you said, you got your meds sorted, and do you feel you had a turning point there where maybe you were able to focus on the here and now then?
Yeah, so I think school was hard for me. For concentration wise, because of the psychosis, it was very much I couldn't do what I wanted to do in school. I always wanted to be a psychiatrist, so in GCSEs I wanted to be a doctor, go do medicine, but then A-levels proved that I wasn't well enough to continue doing that. So I did my first year of A-levels, didn't do as well as I wanted to, so I went to Belfast Met to do a BTEC in art. And that really gave me more freedom, I think, because I was doing something I actually wanted to do and not something I felt like I should do, And
it's just it's an expressive subject as well, isn't it? I've talked about it before. I'm an author as well, and I know people say, write what you know. I think a lot of my characters, I can be oh, that was me whenever I done this, and I remember that teacher and my ex, and so I can kind of level with you on that playing field. So do you mind me going in to talking a wee bit about the psychosis? So when did you start experiencing it? Were you like, did you think it was normal? Were you scared? Like,
well, I think I was around 15, 16 at the time. It was sort of like you thought maybe somebody was just behind you, or like, you know, because hearing the voices was the first thing that started.
And was it voices you recognised? Was it yourself talking to yourself? Was it someone you know? Was it complete strangers?
No, complete strangers. So it started kind of like with one, really, and it was like derogatory things about me. They were saying, you know, so like very focused, like they latched on to my eating disorder and sort of fed on that. So it was like, you're this, you're that, you know, you're worthless, blah blah blah. And then it started growing, so they would be louder and more frequent. I found it hard to talk with people because it's like being in a loud room, really. You know, if you can't hear what somebody's saying and then you're going, what? Like, you know, it was very confusing and stressful. I remember my first, like, really big incident with it. It was when I first started seeing things and feeling like the sensation of bugs under my skin. I remember I had to go to hospital, I had to go to A&E because of it, and it was very scary because it was so real. I actually saw what looked like a woman on fire in my bedroom, and I thought there was a fire spreading in my bedroom, so I was throwing a glass of water at the wall. You know, I had self-harmed, you know, I was downstairs and I was crying, and my dad was called, and then the police were called, and then I had to go to hospital. But sometimes it goes away as quickly as it can come in. Or other times it takes a wee while for me to settle down, you know. I think being in the hospital environment meant I was safe, even though it was like I didn't want to be there, you know. It was scary, you know, especially that very first bad incident. It was like overwhelming, like there was just so much going on and I didn't know what to say or what to think, you know. And that sort of stuck with me. I still get those sensations under my skin. I don't see things as often as I used to. It sort of flares up a bit more when I'm stressed. But the voices are pretty much nearly constant.
Even now?
Yeah.
Even now? So they've never found a way to medicate it or treat it? Or?
Well, I am on antipsychotics, so they dampen it down, I'd say. You know, they don't get rid of it. So if I wasn't on them, I'd be very much worse than I am now. So I am grateful I have that there, you know, because it took a lot of time of trying out different ones to see which ones worked. And obviously some of the medication for antipsychotics, they cause weight gain, so that was I closed them off in my mind because of my eating disorder. I was like, I can't even try them because that would send me over the edge, you know. But luckily the one I'm on was the right one for me, you know. But it took a while to get through them all, you know.
I think that's a common theme as well that I've spoke to people about, is getting the right meds, because there's just so many of them and some of them agree with you and some of them don't. And when you said before about when you came out of school and you got your meds right, and that's when you started to see like an improvement, was that what you were talking about, or were you on anything else prior to that? Or
well, I started off with antidepressants, and then the antipsychotics came in, and then a couple of years ago I'm on mood stabilizers now as well, just because my mood would be very up and down, mostly down, but like it's hard to sort of control and manage. That's what comes with borderline personality disorder. It's like instability of mood. It's actually called emotionally unstable personality disorder. So there's two different names. I just didn't really like the first one. So, but yeah, the medication really did help. It was like I don't think I'd be here without it, to be honest.
And has it been a constant since you were a teenager, or have you come off it and realised you need to go back on it, or?
No, it's been constant. I've tried different ones. I took a period of time where I thought it wasn't working, and I tried a different one, and I was like, oh no, I should be on the ones I was on originally, you know. So it's a bit of experimenting, really.
We've talked about it before, like it's not just as simple as changing your meds. Like, it can take 3 to 4 weeks, and then it's not as like you don't. It's not like having a headache and you take a paracetamol and 20 minutes later you're okay. Like it's a long, drawn out process, and I know that other people I've spoke to have really struggled as well. I know that I think my next question was going to be, do you think you could live without them? But I suppose because some people have said they needed it for that time and then they're okay now, or some people have said no, like I need it constant. So you think you're definitely in the second bracket of that. And do you mind me speaking about the borderline personality disorder? So how did you find out that you had that, or?
So I was in CAMS from, as I said, the age of roughly 13 up until I was 18, and that's CAMS actually diagnosed me with that. So I'd heard about it before, but I wasn't sure if it would fit me. Like, I never really thought about me having it, if you know what I mean. I thought it was just depression and the symptoms of psychosis.
Because that's very stigmatized as well, borderline personality, isn't it? It's like, it gives like Me, Myself and Irene vibes. Like, have you ever seen that film? It's like Jim Carrey, and he just has two completely different, like he can jump between two completely different people, and what one does, he doesn't remember doing it.
Oh yeah.
Is it Me, Myself and Irene? Yeah, I think it is Me, Myself and Irene. I was going to say I've got to get the film completely wrong. But it's like a comedy, but it's like he's got two different personalities, and one's just this normal like Jim Carrey character, and another one's like a badass that like just goes around like stealing cars and sleeping with women, and then he kind of wakes up going, I didn't do any of that. So I think that's what kind of like the general consensus is when you hear borderline personality disorder. It's got that awful stigmatization to it. Can you maybe explain it for a wee bit more for people that might not know what it really is? So
it's basically an instability in mood. That's the biggest thing. So up and down, not really knowing how you feel as well is a big one. Self-destructive behaviours, so like the likes of self-harm or attempting suicide, you know, low mood, trying to think of anything else. It's God, my mind's gone blank. I'm just like you think I know more about this, but no, I think it's you hear a lot of horror stories, especially online, about doctors sort of brushing you away, like not really wanting to treat it because people are seen as difficult when they're not. They're just unwell, you know, because BPD looks very different to different people, you know. A lot of people with BPD do experience psychosis, so it's just very, very complex, I think, because as I said, I didn't think I would have it. Like, I wasn't sure if it would describe me, you know, but yeah, it does. So I've sort of lived with that from 18. I didn't actually really know a lot about it, but they give you the leaflets, you know, and you go look up stuff online, and because it is so different to other people, you're like, oh, I don't know if that is me, but then it is, you know.
And I suppose that like a lot of mental illnesses, it is just so different to different people, and people experience things differently. So are you on any medication for that, or is it just kind of like they give you a leaflet and said deal with it yourself kind of thing?
Basically, I mean, I'm still on the medications that I talked about there, but there is no like medical treatment for it, if you know what I mean. You can manage symptoms, but there's no like, there is, you know, talking therapy is meant to be really good, you know, like they say DBT, which is dialectical behavioural therapy, tongue twister. But I went to a group and that, it's like mindfulness sort of stuff, which works for some people, but it doesn't work for me. So I went through a lot of talking therapy, which does help, I have to say. Like, maybe at the time you don't want to talk about it. Like as a teenager, I thought it was stupid. I was like, what's the point of me being here? I'm not going to talk through my feelings. Like, but looking back, I was like, I'm so glad I did, because now I'm so open, and I wish I could tell myself, you know, my younger self, to be like, no, just keep talking, you know, because at the start you just don't want to, and you feel isolated, you know, and it took me a long time to be able to talk about it, and I wish I knew that sooner.
Does this, whenever you left school and you started in college studying art, is that when you realised that you could express yourself better instead of talking, or?
Yeah, so I mean, in school I did a project on my mental health. I sort of took a break from that when I went into college, because we had certain projects you had to do, you know, it was very much like you have to do this. But when I did the foundation year in tech as well, and you kind of got a bit more free rein, so I did a project on focusing on body image, and it sort of turned into a project about my scars. So I have very heavy scars on my arms and my legs, so I decided to do a project on that, so photographing that, experimenting. That's when I started liking photography, which I didn't think I would like, because I loved the textures you could get. You know, I did use the macro lens, you know, to go really, really close up to my scars on my arms, and it was really helpful for me. I was like, oh, I feel better about this, you know, and if somebody didn't understand how I was feeling, or I found it hard to tell somebody, I could be like, well, this is how I feel, I could show them, or I could maybe not show them and just keep it for myself, and then I could better understand my own mind.
And that's very strange, because mostly you hear people that self-harm and they wear long sleeves, or they want to hide it away, whereas you want to, I don't want to use the word celebrate, but you want to incorporate it into your art. You want to show that this is how I'm feeling. I can't express in words, but I can express through art.
Yeah, so I remember being a teenager and covering my arms all the time, hot summer's day, long sleeves every single time. And I remember the first time I showed my arms was in a shopping centre randomly. I was by myself, but then I felt a bit more free. I was like, why should I be so ashamed of these, you know? And you get people who will point and stare, or laugh even, or give you dirty looks, and you're kind of like, well, that's really sad, and you know, you feel sad within yourself, and you go, maybe I shouldn't be showing these, but so I had to brush it off, and I'm used to it now, you know. But
there is that stigma with self-harm as well, isn't it, that it's attention seeking, but
yeah.
you said yourself you had it for years.
Yeah.
So if you're really attention seeking, you'd be waving it under everyone's nose, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And how did you progress from then to taking the photos of your scars? How did you come about going forward to college and university and that kind of thing?
So from that project in tech of looking at my scars and incorporating that with photography, I was like, oh, I really like photography. I'd never really thought about this before, you know, because I was very much drawing and painting, you know, fine art sort of stuff. I was almost going to do fine art at uni, and then I changed my mind to do photography. So I just found it was a really good way for me to reflect on things. You know, you take the image and you can sort of look at it, you can experiment with it, which is my favourite thing. You know, you don't have to just keep it as a photograph and print it or not print it. You know, you can print it, you can rip it up, tear it up, draw on it, paint on it over the top, which I did a lot of, you know.
And you talked about self-portraits and how it affected how you felt about your body image. Do you want to give me the examples of that?
Yeah, so nearly everything I draw or paint is a self-portrait, not necessarily an accurate one, or, I would use myself as reference, if that makes sense. I have a sort of warped view of my identity. I don't really know, when you look in the mirror and you don't really recognize yourself, but it's sort of like a way of me trying to find myself, and also a bit of trying to find love for myself as well. Painting these portraits, I don't really recognize them, but I do it all the time. Every single thing I do is a self-portrait. But yeah, I think it's just trying to find myself and like myself even a little tiny bit,
Yeah. And would it be if you don't mind me asking, obviously you could maybe look at it, like you said, you can edit it as much as you want, but you could take a photo and say you've got your own self-portrait, and do you highlight what you don't like about yourself? Do you kind of incorporate what you want to change about yourself? What way do you just store it?
Well, it's not even like that. I suppose it's when I did the project in tech I was talking about with the self-harm, I would print out the photos and I would actually cut into them. So I'm adding more cuts on top of the scars. So that was an example of it. It's more therapeutic in a way.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily pointing out what I want to change or what I like, or it's a bit more experimental than that. It's a bit more subtle, so maybe if somebody else looked at it they might not really get it as quickly as I would, obviously because I did it. But it's I suppose getting out your frustration. You can tear it up, rip it up, crumple it up, or you could paint on it, treat it with care, you're trying to look after yourself, that sort of way.
Yeah. And how's the feedback been from your friends, family, and from the markers, obviously, and your tutors?
Well, when I was in uni, it was very much, there were mixed reviews of my work, I suppose. A lot of people went straight to sympathy, feeling bad for me, which was not what I wanted to do. Obviously, you have empathy and you would feel sorry for somebody, but that wasn't the aim of what I'm doing. Some people thought it was a bit whoa, because it would be a bit graphic, with my scars. It would be very out there. I remember actually, it's when I started incorporating text and my own writing into my photographs. So I get an etching tool and scratch in words into my images, and it was very much scary writing, if that makes sense. So sometimes I write about what the voices are saying, which can be very frightening. So if somebody were to read that, they would be like, oh my god, people would be a bit hesitant with it, hesitant to read it. So that's when I started working more with text. I actually did, not my last project, but the project before was on my old psychiatric notes. So I used that paired with my images and just sort of give a different take on it, to be this is the clinical side to my illness, but the photographs show actually how I feel about it rather than somebody else,
Yeah. And were your marks well, or I know you said about people who are a bit taken back, but what the examiners obviously are I don't know much a lot about art, but I'd say they'd be able to look at the different techniques and look at why you did stuff and that kind of thing. What was their kind of reaction?
Well, I always got good enough marks. My A-level project was the first sort of project on my mental illness, apart from the college one. And my art teacher said, the examiner said they'd never seen anything like it before, which was kind of I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I took it as a good thing, you know. But yeah, I've always got like good enough marks, which help me through. You know, it sort of gives me confidence to keep going with it. You know,
and good feedback as well.
Yeah, so in uni especially, like my lectures were very encouraging. You know, they were sort of like whoa at certain points, but they always had something nice to say at the end of it. You know, and they were very encouraging and caring as well. So it made you feel good. You know, sharing something so vulnerable. You know, and somebody giving you love and support back. You know, it was very helpful.
And you recently did like a gallery kind of thing, didn't you? That's I guess where I found you on Facebook. You had like a gallery. Do you want to talk about that?
So that was my last exhibition. Was
sorry, I've got the wrong terminology.
No, don't worry. My last exhibition was based on my final uni project. So it's called The Skin of the Image. So it was massive photographs which were about the same height as me, of me. It was basically self-portraits like I always do, but it was using movement as well. So I had a few still portraits, black background, just me sitting on a chair, and I took the camera in with me, and it was in the studio, so I wanted the plain background, you know, I didn't want anything else in the background. So I used movement and slow shutter speed, which basically means you can see all the movement when you take the photograph. And I just sort of like shook my head, like moved my arms about, you know, just random movements, and I really liked how it turned out. I think it really represented how I felt, because it's like chaotic almost, like because it was based on the psychosis. It was like very confusing to look at, so you couldn't really see my facial features, you know. You knew it was me, but it wasn't me at the same time, you know. And I used the still images to sort of show isolation and how I felt with the illness, you know, because there is a lot of stigma around it, you know. You sort of feel like, you know, there's something wrong with you, or, you know, personality disorder, your personality's broken, you know. That's sort of how you feel about it. And then I used text and texture, so I did the scratching of text into the photograph, the print, and I also crumpled up tissue paper and pasted it down onto the edges of the photograph, and that was sort of to represent the bugs under my skin, you know, so people could go up and touch it if they wanted to, you know, to sort of get a feel for it as well.
Very good. And have you got any coming up?
No, that was my I've done 3 apart from like the uni degree show, and I did them all in Arts for All, the gallery I work at, so I haven't planned anything yet. I think I needed a break from creating loads of art in a short space of time, so no, I haven't got anything lined up yet.
Do you have any future plans with it? What would be your ideal outcome from this degree? What would you like to do?
I don't know. I'm still in that sort of stage. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. I want to always continue with art. I never want to lose that sort of flair for it. I don't know photographer wise if I want to be like, I don't know, like a wedding photographer or something. I don't know, but I'll find something. But I never want to lose that creating art sort of part of me, you know.
Very good. And we end the podcast every week. So if anyone is listening to this who feels like they can empathise with you, they feel like they might be going through a similar thing, if you're having a bad day, if your psychosis is very prominent, or you just don't feel like getting out of bed, or the voices in your head, what advice would you give to someone listening to this to make them feel better? To make you, what do you do to make you feel better?
I'd say take your time. Don't let people pressure you into doing anything. Like, even if your best of the day is getting out of bed, like, congratulate yourself, honestly, because it's harder than people think it is, and allow yourself to be vulnerable, because keeping it all in works short term, but long term you're better just allowing yourself to feel your emotions. Don't avoid it, just let it out in whatever way you want to do, whether it's art, whether it's writing, whether it's photography, whatever you like to do. Just keep going, because it does get easier.
Thank you very much for agreeing to come on.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Anyone negatively affected by this week's episode, there are a number of links in the bio to help. That's all from me. I will see you next week on That's Mental Mate.